So, in other news, it was a lot of fun doing the episode last week, doing a Gaslight Anthem.
It was, and again, I know I didn't have to do that because I didn't have to apologize for Wiz Khalifa, but at the same time, it is an album I enjoyed as well, so I'm glad we got the chance to talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. For me, it was a real cool time.
As opposed to Wiz Khalifa, which was just, for you at least, no fun.
And welcome back, everybody, to the best music podcast on all sides of planet Earth. And the way that we measure that distinction is Matt and I travel to Ukraine, and we have our destination to be finalized at Uganda. But, ladies and gentlemen, we know that that's not that far of a distance, so we take the long way around. This podcast is called Hey, Listen to This, and it is hosted by two dashingly good-looking men who share the same middle name. I'm the one. I'm the only. I'm the one who is actually finding himself to be a Minnesota Wild fan due to the fact that he drafted Kirill Kaprizov, Matt Boldy, and Z Buyam in one of his fantasy hockey leagues, and he's absolutely loving life every single time that they play. Ryan James Kearns.
And I am the one, the only, the so long Carolina Hurricanes, hello Minnesota Wild. Don't tell my fiance that you said that, Matthew James Durzik. And for those of you who don't know what exactly we do here on Hey, Listen to This, we don't talk hockey. Occasionally we do at the start of the episode, but what we do truly throughout the course of the episode, it's kind of right there in the title. It's Hey, Listen to This. Every week, me and Ryan choose a music album to listen to, and we go by it track by track, line by line, note by note. We pick out what we like, what we don't like, what we thought could have been better, what we thought stood out. We give it an overall rating at the end of the episode, and then we base our recommendations of albums you may want to listen to if you like this album, etc., etc. And in the category of etc., etc., Ryan, what did we talk about last week here on this show?
We traveled back to the year of 2008 in order to talk about the 59 Sound by the Gaslight Anthem. And yeah, like I kind of talked about in the intro of this episode, for me, I was very happy going back into that album and really diving into an album that I've had on repeat throughout my formative musical years, and what I've considered to be my formative musical years that I'm referencing here is from I would consider post high school, college until now. I mean, some might argue my formative musical years actually were when I first discovered music up and through high school, but fight me. So yeah, Matt, what was your feelings about covering the 59 Sound by the Gaslight Anthem last week?
I'm glad we got to talk about it because again, even though it is a band that is more in your neck of the woods as far as your musical upbringing, for me, it's just an album that I came to enjoy based off your recommendations of the band itself and my discovery of the album itself. So again, that's one of those ones where I've had it in the freezer for a while, the metaphorical freezer speaking, but glad to pull it out and give it another listen because it was a good time. And again, if you want to hear our opinions on the 59 Sound by the Gaslight Anthem, just go back one or do whatever it is you have to do in order to find last week's episode. Now on to this week's episode. A little bit of a different direction, kind of, sort of ish. Ryan, I will let you take the reins because it was your turn to pick. And what is it that we're going to be talking about on this week's episode?
So, on this week's episode of Hey, Listen to This, we're going to be traveling to the year of 1969. And we're going to be talking about the debut album by the one, the only, what some would argue to be the godfathers of punk rock, the Stooges. And that album is it's like self-titled, so like not really that big of a album title there. So for those of you who are out there who are wondering, whoa, 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 Ryan, Matt, I don't know what is a Stooge. What are the Stooges? Well, for those of you who are not comedy fans, referencing the Three Stooges there, the Stooges, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you what they were. So, like I alluded to the fact, they were considered to be the the godfathers of punk rock. They were formed in Ann Arbor, Michigan, in 1967. The band, had the brothers Ron and Scott Ashton and Dave Alexander, and most notably, their lead singer, James Ostenberg. I might be mispronouncing that last name. Don't at me. Fight me. I don't care. But the nickname for that singer, he's more commonly known as Iggy Pop. So Iggy Pop was first inspired to form the Stooges after actually meeting blues drummer Sam Lay during a visit to Chicago. Upon returning to Detroit, Iggy sought to create a new form of blues music that was not derivative of historical trends, but he wanted he wanted an influence of garage rock bands such as the Sonics and the Kinks. So he eventually through the grapevine met brothers Ron and Scott and Dave Alexander. Ron Ashton was on guitar, Scott Ashton's on drums, and Dave Alexander's on bass. So the group formed. So how did Iggy Pop get his nickname? Do you know how?
I don't know how, and I'm not even going to try to take a guess as to why. I'm just going to let facts be facts on this one.
So it's not really that big of a story or fun thing, but the three other members of the band named Ostberg Pop after a local character whom he resembled, and shortly after witnessing a MC5 concert in Ann Arbor, Ostberg began using the stage name Iggy Pop, the name that he like I said, he's most known for nowadays. So after the group formed, Iggy attributes two key motivating influences to take the band to the next level. Those two factors were seeing the Doors perform at a homecoming dance for the University of Michigan, and the second was seeing an all-girls rock band from Princeton, New Jersey, called the Untouchables perform in the summer of 1967. Actually hearing about him being inspired by the Doors makes a lot of sense, considering what Iggy has been known for as being a frontman, and especially how he performs live. So I could see the comparison there. So moving on from there. So it might be a lapse in my research, but I wasn't able to find what the Stooges were originally called. But do you know what they were originally billed as when they first started doing live gigs?
Ooh, okay. This one I'm going to take a guess on. Ooh, that's tough. I'm going to say the New Doors.
Close, but no cigar. Actually, not really close, to be honest with you. So they were actually it was closer to the name of Stooges. So they were simply billed as psychedelic Stooges. So not too far off from the original band name. So yeah, they were originally billed as the Psychedelic Stooges at the Grand Ballroom in Detroit, Michigan, and other venues where they played with the band MC5 and others. So their first major commercial show as the Psychedelic Stooges was on March 3rd, 1968, at the Grand Ballroom in Detroit, opening up for Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Kind of imagine that kind of lineup.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. So, according to John Sinclair, who booked the show, the Psychedelic Stooges were substitutes for the MC5, who had a pretty immense Detroit reputation that made Blood, Sweat, and Tears reluctant to follow them. So, thanks to Blood, Sweat, and Tears, sweating, the fact that they would have to be following MC5 after their show, the Stooges got their first break. So, and later on in that year, Elektra Records sent DJ/publicist Danny Fields to scout the MC5, and that honestly resulted in contracts for both the band and the Stooges. So that's how they got signed to Elektra Records, and that's what kind of essentially brings us to the album that we're talking about today. In 1969, they released their self-titled debut album. It wasn't well received, and it didn't perform well commercially at the time. So, but all the while, the Stooges gained a reputation for the wild, primitive live performances. Pop, like I kind of alluded to, was known for his outrageous on-stage behavior. Do you know what he used to do back in the day?
Oh, boy. I probably shouldn't know this, but I get, he didn't invent crowd surfing, did he, or did he?
Well, actually, that's one of the things. He popularized stage diving, so he was all kind of along those lines.
Okay, so I figured that was one of them. Aside from that, performed naked. I don't know. It's something along those lines.
I mean, he was known for flashing his his manhood to the audience at some point. So you're not too far off there. So,
I was gonna say Iggy Pop is one of those guys where it's everything that people thought that Jim Morrison did or maybe even Mick Jagger did, Iggy Pop probably actually did those things.
Yeah, so he saw Jim Morrison performing up on the stage in the University of Michigan and was just like, you know what? Yes, but more. So other things that Iggy was known for at the time was smearing his bare chest with hamburger meat and peanut butter, cutting himself with shards of glass, and the other stuff that we talked about. So that's a brief synopsis about who the Stooges are, what basically led them to the album that we're talking about today. And yeah, before I give my before I tell the audience here what my relationship with the Stooges and Iggy Pop is, I'm going to turn it over to you, Matt. What is your relationship with the Stooges as a whole?
Honestly, pretty minimal, if I'm going to be clear about it. It is one of those situations, and we've talked about this before on the show, where there's a lot of bands where I've read about them before diving into their catalog. Now, sometimes with a band like Television, for example, I would eventually come to my curiosity senses and decide, hey, I'm going to listen to that album and give it a shot. I can't say I've ever really done that for Iggy Pop or the Stooges. Aside from two songs I know from the top of my head, well, I'll go three, which are the one song by Iggy and the Stooges, which is Search and Destroy from a later album called Raw Power, and also two solo songs from Iggy himself, entitled Lust for Life and The Passenger, from his Lust for Life album later in the 70s. Aside from that, I really have not given the Stooges much of a listen. I have read about them. I know they've been ranked in the Rolling Stone Top 500. They've been, like you said, considered godfathers of punk. I did not know, until you mentioned it in your overview, Ryan, that Iggy was inspired to start a band by watching the Doors perform at the University of Michigan, because as we talked about on the Doors episode, I have a copy of John Densmore's book, Riders on the Storm, John Densmore being the drummer of the Doors. And in that tell-all book, he does talk about a performance at the University of Michigan where Jim Morrison was so drunk and belligerent that he, like, the show basically ended with two of the band members just walking off the stage. And I'm wondering if it's that same show. I don't know if it is, but if it is, that is a piece of rock history that is just impeccable. Because I don't know how many times the Doors would have performed at the U of M, but yeah, that is some fascinating ideology there. But again, that's about as far as I go with the Stooges. So I will turn it back over to you and have you talk about it.
So for me, like, kind of along the same lines as you, honestly, with the fact that I know Iggy Pop and the Stooges, godfathers of punk rock, very influential band, very much like a cult classic rock band from like the late 60s and going further. So, and songs that I knew out of their out of the camp of Iggy Pop and the Stooges as a whole, some of the songs that you mentioned already, and the only other song I'm going to add on top of that is one of the songs that we're going to be talking about here today, which is "I Want to Be Your Dog." I knew "Search and Destroy." I've listened to "Raw Power" a handful of times, but it never really stuck with me. And I just feel like as somebody who very much enjoys punk music as a whole, I felt like it was very important to just go back to where it all started and see what all the hubbub was about with the Stooges and this debut album of theirs.
Yeah, I'm curious about the hubbub too, because I mean, the Stooges are a band. I mentioned that this album in particular made it into Rolling Stones 500. Their second album made it there. Raw Power made it there. And you're just like, whoa, this band must be really good if they're getting such critical acclaim. But like you said, I've never, none of their stuff has ever really stuck with me aside from those few songs. So I say we go right into the land of the hubbub and figure out what the Stooges are all about and how they came to be on record and into the world, Ryan. So with that in mind, I'm going to throw it to you to kick things off with the track that starts it all, 1969.
So with 1969, I very much enjoy this as an opening track for the album. It basically lays kind of the groundwork, except with the exception of one track that we'll talk about here, coming up here, about halfway through the record of with 1969, you get the foundation of what basically the whole album's gonna be for more or less. But with the nuts and bolts here that I really did like, and what really stands out for me is right away that swinging beat that is just coming right out of the gate with the drums and the hand claps, counteracting the guitar and bass. That, for me, kind of took me by surprise, and I really did enjoy it. It was really, really solid. I was just instantly hooked. And, on the instrumental front, that's pretty much it, for the most part. I really did enjoy the hand claps. And the performances as a whole were pretty tight throughout the whole song. Eventually the song does progress to the point of, towards the back half, the guitar actually takes more of a center stage and kind of does a solo of sorts. The guitarist here, just hits, probably just hits an effect pedal and starts doodling around and just really just diving into that I want to say a chaotic punk feel towards the end of the track. But yeah, that's pretty much it on the instrumental front. And on the vocal front, Iggy's vocals are really solid, but considering that the lyrics here are basically saying Yeah, it's 1969. Woohoo! And it's a very apathetic set of lyrics. Like, I did like the way that he delivered the lyrics. So, like, the song as a whole is a very nice touch, and I wish I had a little bit more to say about it, but, like, I feel like this is what we're going to find with this record, at least from my experience. Like, it's pretty much cut and dry, and that's pretty much what punk rock is as a whole. Like, there's a whole lot of not a lot of thrills but behind it. But I will say this though, Iggy has been quoted saying this about the song: "The key is another year with nothing to do. Boo hoo!" And for me, that was true because of frustration, because I hadn't gotten my hands on the levers of powers, the means of production that would allow me to express myself. And also, I hadn't learned an F chord yet. But on the other hand, I was singing for the delinquent group I belonged to, because the other guys in the group would never even think about that. They just go, there's nothing to do. So, like, for essentially trying to, like, grasp the spirit of, like, youth and punk rock at the time, like, basically that's it to a T. Like, another year and nothing to do, boo hoo. Oh man, there's nothing to do, but, like, being kind of stuck in the cycle of, like, not quite in a point in your life where you can, like, like, grab the levers of power and the means of production to, like, really come into your own. Like, I felt like that was an excellent touch. So, yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on 1969. I did not land in a top spot for me in terms of favorite track rankings here. In full disclosure, I only have a top 3 here. I don't have a bottom anything.
So for me, I have a top 3 and a bottom 2 for this album, and that's not saying nothing, because we only have 8 tracks to cover on this, so 5 of them have made some sort of impact positively or negatively. For 1969, I pretty much agree with a lot of the stuff you said. I think the instrumental performance is fantastic. First of all, it starts with that militant psychedelic march that sounds almost like a bit of a Doors ripoff, and then they pull the cover from your eyes. It's like, haha, just kidding. We're not doing that today. And they get into this old school Bo Diddley beat, which, like you say, the crunchy guitar, the hand claps, and the rhythm section pounding out that rhythm is just, the rhythm section pounding out the rhythm. The floor is made of floor. But anyways, the point being that the band sounds great, and you mentioned Ron Ashton's guitar, particularly at the end of the song. I wholeheartedly agree with you. I think it's the best sounding the guitar is, not just for a punk rock sound, but really throughout the entire album. It just sounds like right in your face. And Iggy Pop's delivery of these very cynical, pessimistic lyrics is dead on. He has that snarl in his voice. He does sound a little bit like Lou Reed, and that's not a bad thing. I only bring it up because this record was produced by John Cale of the Velvet Underground, so I did find that little parallel to be kind of funny, and it won't be the last time I bring it up. But even then, Iggy just has that snarl in his voice that, yeah, it's 1969, another year, nothing's changed, nothing's going on. And I think the big thing about that line, about that whole motif, is that, 1969, especially with Woodstock and the things that preceded it, the Summer of Love, the Democratic riots of 1968 in Chicago, like, people thought that there was perpetual change, like things were happening every day. And Iggy's just coming out and saying, no, it isn't. Nothing's changed. Stop that. Stop that. Stop being silly. And one other thing I'll say about this track is that at the end it does get repetitive with the, well, it's 1969, before just sort of dwindling into the guitar solo. And I know last week I gave the Gaslight Anthem a little bit of flack for doing this on Miles Davis and the Cool, but here I think it actually adds a little bit of context in a genius way, honestly, because by repeating the year and just repeating the title over and over again, you sort of get the sense of they're not just telling you the date to tell you what time it is. They're telling you because if it weren't for us telling you what year it is, you wouldn't know what year it is because, as we stated earlier, nothing's going to change. Things are sad. Boo-hoo. Life is what it is. So I think that's actually a genius move to sort of have that sort of repetitive, droning pessimism that really sort of completes the whole song. And for me, this did land in my top 3. And for reasons I will get into later, I have this song at number 1.
Coming right out of the gate, you're like, yeah, man, the year is 1969, and oh man, boo-hoo, but I enjoy it, man. So, but then your analysis about like the sentiment about like, yeah, big deal, it's 1969. Like, I hate to say it, like that same sentiment can be applied to the year of our Lord 2025. Be like, well, yeah, it's 2025. We shouldn't be doing this. Let's get real, man. Like, you know, like we're a flawed race. So, like, you know, no matter how much time has progressed, we're still a bunch of monkeys just trying to figure stuff out, man.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's just. I mean, you're so right. Like, you could literally change the year of this song from year 1 to 2025, and it really wouldn't matter too much as far as meaning. Vocal delivery would have to be a little different, but, you know, that's aside the point. But yeah, like, everyone's just like, oh, you know, it's the future. We got flying cars out. Have you ever been to Ohio? Stop talking to me. So it is, again, a song that very much is the antithesis of the Summer of Love. And it is a full performance, which, again, I'll explain what that is in a little bit.
So, with that in mind, are you ready to shuffle on over to the next track? And, I mean, I feel like I could make a joke here, but I'm just going to say the track title here. And that track title is I Want to Be Your Dog.
I Want to Be Your Dog. An autobiography by Timber and Bronson. Now, I Want to Be Your Dog is what I think many would consider the big song off the album, the one that most people know. And there's a reason for that. First of all, much like 1969, it starts off with a fake out, which isn't so much of a change as much as it is something different from what it's going to be. So at the start, you get this real blast of guitar from Ron Ashton, which just has sort of a power solo behind it. And then once he's done with that little intro, it gets into the beat of the song, which is just magnificent because once again, the rhythm section is locked in. And you got Dave and Scott providing the bass and drums that they need to. And it's very much as basic a beat as you could possibly get. And much like we talked about with Black Sabbath's Paranoid, this is a situation where Ashton sort of joins in that. So you have the three-headed monster of guitar, bass, and drums just sort of thumping out that rhythm. But you add 2 little pieces to that from John Cale himself, who, as producer, played jingle bells and piano on this track. So in case you're looking to spice up your Christmas list this year, here you go. So yeah, the beat is just so good. And it's so simple, too, because it's just a descending chord structure that goes ba 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 ba, and it just rocks out so hard. And as far as Iggy Pop is concerned, again, he kind of has that Lou Reed thing going for him, but here it almost has a little bit of an inflection similar to Bob Dylan, too. Like, he's not trying to sing in tone. He's just basically exclaiming these thoughts that are in his head. And lyrically speaking, I'm not going to get into the lyrics. It's pretty much right there in the title of I Want to Be Your Dog. And there are, you know, some derivative nature of that, but basically this is a song that says, hey, baby, what's up? Let's party. And again, the way that he sings it is so intense. And aside from a track we're going to talk about later, I would say it's his best vocal performance, his most passionate vocal performance on the album. because he just bringing it the whole time. And yeah, it's weird. Like, it doesn't really do anything extravagant. It just goes to work, puts on its hard hat, lays down the beat, just bulldozes over you, and Iggy decides, you know what, this is the beat to, have a good time to. And he's absolutely right. So, my lone critique and why this only lands at number 2 in my top 3 is a very simple one. It's short. Like, granted, not every song has to follow a typical pop structure of verse, chorus, solo, chorus, out. We've talked about experimental stuff before, and I'm all for that. But it just feels like once it gets into the solo, it just fades out for no other reason than to make room for other tracks. And that left me a little, like, wanting more. Like, no, this is the good stuff, guys. Like, keep going. Let the tape roll. And for some reason, they chose not to. And I it left me with a little bit of a unfortunate taste in my mouth. But on its own, still a great song. So right out of the gate, a literal 1-2 punch with 1969 at number 1, and I Want to Be Your Dog for me at number 2.
So I wonder if the fact that the track does feel short is due to the fact that we do have John Cale in production here, and the Velvet Underground were known for longer songs, so maybe he was just trying to I don't want to say box the Stooges in. Maybe the Stooges were just like, hey, we want to just be influenced by garage rock. We want to just, cut this song clean and dry. We don't want it to overstay its welcome. So just a couple of, thoughts I had about the idea of it being short. However, for me, a lot of the points that you made here with I Want to Be Your Dog, I share wholeheartedly, hand in hand. I didn't mind it being short. It actually didn't feel short to me. But the instrumentation, like you highlighted, that distorted guitar, the way it just sounds coming out of the gate, it's just so satisfying. And John Cale, doing the jingle bells and the piano, I was just like, what? Like, the godfather of all punk music. Like, this song here is what some people would consider to be, like, the starter pack for Punk 101 here. Like, it has jingle bells and piano on it. Fun stuff, man. But, like, the point that you made with, like, the drums and bass being in unison with everything else and comparing that to Black Sabbath's Paranoid, like, you were right on the money. Like, that is what makes this song so effective. And it's only complemented by the fact that, like you, I agree that Iggy's singing here is just really good. I did appreciate it more so than on 1969. For the fact that you did compare his singing to Lou Reed and Bob Dylan at points, I just felt it was so snarky. Like the way that he sings, "Now I wanna be your dog." Like I'm not doing it justice. Ladies and gentlemen, if you actually want to hear the proper audio, pause the pod, go listen to the song. It's not that long of a song. Come back, and now you can understand what I'm talking about. So, other points I just want to make about the song as a whole, the guitar solo at the end is great. I do like the tone that is used there. Shout out to Ron Ashton. His solo work on a lot of the songs here are a highlight for me, and I do enjoy the effect pedals that he uses to counteract the distortion that we hear throughout many of the tracks as a whole. So how did this song come to be? How did the group basically write, they were saying hey, I want to be your dog. Well, like I did with the previous track, I have another quote from Iggy Pop himself about the song. So Iggy said, "The words basically came from me hanging out in my bedroom, just thinking, what would be cool to sing to that riff? And I thought, well, it has to be something big, The biggest thing I knew about was God. I wasn't that into singing about God, but then one day I thought, God, if you turned God backwards, what would you have? I love simple stories like that, man. So, and like you kind of alluded to, like, for those of you who are not aware about the song and you want to like have like some idea what the song is about, and you just basically need me to like spell it out. It's about a man who wants to be a submissive partner to his partner. So I'm not going to dive so much into the lyrics. And for the most part here, throughout this record, I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not going to dive into too much of the lyrics as a whole because there's not really much here to like dive into. It's pretty surface level, but I do enjoy it nonetheless. Only other note I have to say about "I Want to Be Your Dog" is it did land in my top 3. It is indeed my favorite song off the whole record.
Again, I respect that, and again, if it were just a little bit longer, because it's not so fact that the song itself is short, like time-wise, like, the fact that it's just a little under 3 minutes or around 3 minutes, like, that's fine. But it almost feels like it cuts out during the solo. Like, it feels like the solo just sort of is getting started, and you're like, yeah, guitar solo. It's just gonna keep on. Wait, where'd you guys go? What happened here? So, yeah, that is, like, to me, 1969 was more of a full song, which I have a lot of similar compliments for. If I Want to Be Your Dog was as long as that, I would probably be right there with you with it being number 1, but I got to be true to myself and to you, so it comes back at number 2, but still a great, great, great song.
You're allowed to have your opinions and everything like that, and like, while I was kind of taking a look in terms of like prepping the next song's lyrics that we're going to be talking about here shortly, I did see that there was an original John Cale mix on a deluxe edition. So perhaps like maybe after this episode, like at some point within the next week or so, or in the future, like you're a busy man. You got stuff going on. Check out the 2005 reissue of this album and specifically seek out the John Cale mix because, apparently there might have been some, I don't know if Elektra Records basically heard I Wanted Your Dog and was just like, you know what? Too long. We need it shorter, which is interesting considering what the next song is.
Yeah, we'll get into it, and I'd say we get right into it because Ryan, it is your turn to kick things off. The final track on side A and the third track of 8, which is "We Will Fall."
So, talk about a complete grab of the emergency brake on the highway while you're going 70 miles per hour of going from 1969 and I Want to Be Your Dog in terms of a sonic palette. We Will Fall, this song completely gave me all sorts of whiplash, and I'm not talking about the movie starring J.K. Simmons. Oh my goodness. But I will say though, for me, I enjoyed the song. It wasn't a highlight off the whole album for me. So I'm just gonna say coming out of the gate, it did not land in a top spot for me. But it did its trick. And a couple of aspects about the track that I did like is on the instrumental front. First of all, the whole song is before I get into the instrumentals, the whole song is basically grounded by a chant, which is Om Shri Ram Ja. Ram Ja Ja Ram. And if I somehow summoned the devil, I apologize about that. But
it was a good run.
So it's grounded by that chant, which just really did take me by surprise. And that chant in its own, breaking the chant down bit by bit. So where is a sacred spiritual incantation made before and during the resuscitation of spiritual texts. Shri means glorious, revered. Ram means spirit, Lord as light, strength, and virtue in a masculine sense. And Ja means victory. So, I mean, very much a spiritual chant through and through. So, outside of the chant, though, the wah wah guitar and like I didn't know that the other instrument that was playing counteracting that guitar was a viola until I actually dug into the liner notes of the track here. So it does make quite an interesting backdrop for me. Like it very much reminds me of Godspeed Your Black Emperor. And like for me that that touches a good musical liking for me. So outside of the drone with the wah wah and the viola, like we get hand claps here in the track from, and I was a little taken back by the hand claps as well. Like I'm just gonna say this now. This album has a lot of hand claps, eh? Like,
Yeah.
so, and outside of like those notes, the only thing I got to say about the track as a whole is the way that Iggy sounds throughout the whole track. I found to be crazy good. Like he just lingers on every phrase. Like yes, it's a like the spiritual chant is grounding the whole song, but it just seems like he's kind of like almost like oozing like sexuality throughout the majority of the song. And then the way that he sounds at the very end of the song when he's just saying goodbye, like again, it was unique, a bit of a whiplash, but I did enjoy it. And I actually kind of laughed when I heard it the first time because all I heard is Iggy being like, goodbye. Goodbye. And I'm like, well, that's not what you sounded like before, but, I could dig it, man. So, yeah, that's my thoughts about We Will Fall. I'm going to turn it over to you, Matt. What were your thoughts about this over 10-minute long track, dude?
Yeah, it is a 10-minute long track, and a lot of my thoughts are similar to yours. First of all, it is not what I was expecting at all. I did look ahead of time and see that there was a 10-minute track. I'm thinking, okay, this might be a long sort of jam, maybe a little bit of guitar or something a little slower, kind of like the end, or maybe like Time Has Come Today. But no, I was not expecting this. I was not expecting some droning chant and hand claps and a mix of Ron Ashton's guitar and John Cale's viola, creating this droll, dense chant of a track. And funny enough, for a song that sounds to most people like something they never heard before, I immediately knew what this reminded me of. There was a track we covered a little over a year ago, I want to say, which was Who Are the Brain Police by the Mothers of Invention. And to me, that song was very reminiscent when hearing this song, except there was a bit more of a tongue-in-cheek, sardonic nature from Frank Zappa, whereas here, it's a lot more straightforward and a lot more repetitive, and does have, I agree, a solid execution on all fronts. The chant sounds good, the band sounds good, and Iggy, once again, delivering, like you say, a very, I know you say oozing sexuality. You're right, but not in a sexy way. Like, here he is just, like, trying to... This feels like a guy who is stoned out of his mind, on the precipice of death, either from too much drugs or too much alcohol, looking to hook up, and sort of mixing his ideology of, hey, baby, what's up, with, hey, I'm seeing the devil and I'm about to throw up, or something like that. And it does work very well in matching the droll energy of the track. And I will say that the goodbyes at the end, whether they were intentionally meant to be funny or not, are very funny. Like, the way he's just like, goodbye, goodbye. And I think what helps it be funny is the fact that it has this sort of, idea that, oh, the track's about to end, and it keeps going for about another 3 minutes. So I did think that was funny. However, much like I talked about on the Coldplay episode, at the start of that, knowledge can sometimes be a double-edged sword. It can cut both ways. So, when looking up the lyrics to this song on Genius.com, I found out in the description that this song was used to pad the album out. Now, whether that's true or not is up to interpretation. Maybe Genius is wrong. Maybe this track was meant to be as long as it is on an artistic merit. But, for as simplistic as it is, there is no reason, none whatsoever, that this track should be 10 minutes, while I Want to Be Your Dog with a better riff, a better sound, and a better execution should be cut off mid-solo to make room for this. So with that knowledge, unfortunately, despite this track being well executed, I have no choice but to put it in my bottom 2 as my second least favorite track.
Oh man, I thought you were going to be like, this is just like, because it cut off I Want to Be Your Dog, and it was just too long, it was just padded out. Screw this track, it's my least favorite track. So I'm curious to see what, your least favorite track is, because I kind of, pegged this track here as maybe being one of your bottom tracks if you had any. But, yeah, I can totally respect your line of thinking of reasoning. For me, even with the knowledge of this song here, essentially being used as a way to pad out the runtime of the album, it doesn't affect my appreciation about the track. But it still stands where it is. It's a fun, interesting experiment for me.
Which is fair. And again, if it weren't for the knowledge that I obtained with it, because again, going back to that Coldplay episode, if I had not realized that Politic was a We Live in a Society response to the September 11th attacks, I probably would have just named it an album track on that review too. But facts are facts, and I gotta be honest, I saw that and I was like, no, this is some crap. I feel like one track should be longer than the other, and I feel objectively that I don't know who did it, whether it was the Stooges themselves, John Cale, or Jack Holtzman, who was the president of Elektra Records, or somebody else involved. Either way, the wrong decision, in my opinion, was made. Now, that being said, again, I don't think this is a bad track. I don't. I think this track is a competently executed 10-minute drone of a track. But, again, my deranking of it is purely an objective, sort of mathematical thing. So, let's be clear. I like how this song sounds, but it should not be that long. It cannot be that long when a much better song is preceding it. And that's my final piece on that.
Totally fair, man. Totally fair. We're this is America, and we're allowed to express our opinions for right now. But with that in mind, before we kick it off into side B of the record with the track No Fun, Matthew, I have a question. Not for my dogs, not for my neighbors. I have a question for you.
Well, it'd be kind of weird if you asked your neighbors in the middle of the podcast, but okay, what is that question?
So, and that question is, if the listener out there is, just enjoying what we're bringing here with this week's episode about the debut album from the Stooges, and they want to help support what you and I do on a week in, week out basis, what are some ways that they can help support, connect with us, maybe give us purpose in our podcasting journey? That way we can keep on keeping on, my dude.
Well, the best way to help us keep on keeping on is for you to keep on, and that is by giving us a listen every week. We upload our episodes regularly to your favorite podcasting platform of choice. We're on sites such as Pocket Cast, Apple Music, and Spotify. We also upload our videos to YouTube every week. We put it in a video format, and allow you to use it, whether it's YouTube in the background or YouTube Music. You can listen to us that way. And if you are on any of these platforms of choice, whether it's on a podcasting platform or YouTube, do whatever you need to do to please the algorithmic gods. And if you appreciate what you heard, give us a 5-star rating, give us a like and subscribe, leave a comment. And if you are so inclined to share it with someone you know is into music, and you want to share the links to our shows, we'd be grateful for that as well. But if by chance you feel like there's multiple people that might fall under that category and you don't want to individually text each and every one of them or create one giant group text of people you don't know or people you do know but people that may not know each other, that's where I was going with that, is you can share our links to our shows on social media, because we too are on social media. We are on Facebook, we are on Threads, we are on Instagram, and we are on Blue Sky. So if you are looking for us on any of those sites, the username is ttheylisten. Again, that is ttheylisten to find our podcast on social media. And speaking of ttheylisten, if you want to reach out to us directly, but you do not know us directly, we have an email address where you can do that. That is ttheylisten@gmail.com. Again, that is ttheylisten@gmail.com. If you want to reach out to us, give us some feedback, some positive stuff, some negative stuff, or even a future recommendation for an episode we could do in the future. We have done recommendations in the past, and we would love to do them again. So again, that is ttheylisten@gmail.com. And for any of you who have taken a part in any or all of those steps so far, again, thank you. My wonderful co-host and I appreciate all that you have done to help us so far, because again, we're not sponsored by any major gambling sites or future video games or pizza shops. No, we are just two dudes with microphones and a love for music discussing our thoughts with you, and we're glad that you have been with us every step of the way. And Ryan, same goes for you. Glad you have been with me for almost full 100 reviews and close to 100 episodes as well.
Yeah, man, I can't wait for episode and review 100. Well, I mean, episode 100 is going to come. I think we're already there, if I'm not mistaken. We could be, like, with all the...
We are, this here is episode number 98, so we are 2 away from the 100th episode, the 100th full episode, not counting Discog Draft. You count Discog Drafts, we've already passed that marker a while ago, so sorry. But as far as full-length episodes, we are on number 98, so, and I think this is review number 96, so... After this, we're 4 away from 100 reviews and 2 away from 100 episodes.
Okay, duly noted. But I have some fun stuff cooked up for our 100th review. It's going to be a fabulous time, man. But yeah, like right back at you, man. Like this has been one hell of a journey. Like if it wasn't for this journey here and like talking with you, I would not have experienced like Frank Zappa, Toledo, and like the Turtles and Jellyfish. The list goes on and on and on. And like the conversations between you and I are always fun. But that being said, the next track kicking off side B on this LP is not a fun track because it is called No Fun. Matthew, I'm going to turn it over to you. Is this track no fun, or is it some fun? Let's find out.
Let's find out. So, No Fun kicks off side B, and do you like hand claps? Because there's a lot on this song. There are a lot of hand claps, and honestly, I am 1000% here for it. The way this track kicks off, especially after hearing 10 minutes of drone on We Will Fall Again. Not that it was bad, but this sounds more like what you expect from the Stooges and what I would consider the good stuff. Because now you have hand claps along with the guitar and the bass and the drums once again working so closely in tandem to create a mildly syncopated but very danceable basic rhythm to kick off side B with No Fun. And that just grooves on throughout the entirety of the next 4 or 5 minutes. It is just a impeccable groove. And then you get Iggy Pop, who once again sounds very sardonic, and in my opinion, the most original he's sounded so far. Because first track, he kind of sound like Lou Reed. Second track, a little more like Bob Dylan mixed with Lou Reed. We Will Fall, definitely like Lou Reed. Here he sounds more like Iggy Pop because he's very much delivering that snarl, that very sneering-esque vocal that he has. And then when he gets those yelps and growls towards the end of the song, when he's going, come on, come on, there is a little bit of Jim Morrison in that, but at the same time, the synthesis of whatever he's going off of coalesces into its own thing with this track. So I really appreciate Iggy's performance on that as well. And it's just a rocking good time, man. It is just a really rocking good time, which is ironic because the track is No Fun. And about that, the lyrics to this track are very simple, much like 1969. The only difference is it's not as time-stamped. Like, it's not to be a message about, oh, it's this year and, things are going to be fun. Really, it's just, I'm not going to be any fun. And I'm no fun to be around, and life is no fun to be around, when I'm alone and I'm frustrated and da-da-da-da-da. And this song, once again, keeps it simple, lays down the law on an instrumental front, and Iggy just sounds so, frustrated and yet focused, which is not an easy combo to pull off this vocal performance. And much like 1969, the guitar sounds great, and Ashton's guitar towards the end of the track really starts to groove out and almost fulfill what I Want to Be Your Dog started to promise as far as a full, realized, stomp clap, in your face, garage rock, proto-punk type sound. So yeah, I like this track quite a bit, and just like that, my top 3 is completed. I have No Fun at number 3 in my top 3.
So one could say that it is indeed a fun track for you. So we answered part.
Oh yeah,
we answered part A of that question. Now, is it a fun track for me? Well, I'm like, I think it's evident by the fact that I said, like, I don't have any bottom tracks here, that this song is not going to be no fun, but a lot of the points that you shared, I agree with you 1,000%. Like, the hand claps and the guitar basically kind of like dueling again, like creating like a just an interesting sonic backdrop, like really hooked me into like the appreciation about the track as a whole. And just the other thing I want to talk about the instrumentation is what like you said, Rick Ashton's guitar coming in towards the end with the solo. Again, solid time. I really did enjoy the tone there and just the overall performance and the construction of that solo. But for me, like, outside of that, the one thing that just basically takes this track here, it takes it like over the top in terms of my appreciation, and then it indeed becomes a fun track for me, is Iggy Pop himself and his vocals. Like, he's really embracing his snarky side, like, coming right out of the gate, basically singing the lyrics that you illustrated in your best section about the track. And the way that you get that transition in the outro, and he changes up his delivery to a more frantic side, like that, like growl and like the kind of like frustrated, like, side that you illustrated. Like, for me, I just really, it took the track over the finishing line in terms of becoming like a tier track for me. Spoiler alert, this did land in my top 3, but I'll let you know what position at the end of my section here. But like, it's like, for the fact that Iggy's vocal delivery changes up and like you get such an interesting sonic backdrop throughout the whole track, it takes this track and elevates it over tracks like 1969 and We Will Fall, and a couple other tracks that, like, we will eventually get to coming up here relatively shortly, and just made me really appreciate the track on a whole new level. And for those of you who are wondering what the song is about, it's a song about being bored and how angry you can get about being bored. So, and that is evident with that vocal change up that both me and Matt illustrated. So, where does this land in my top 3? I've already said that I Want to Be Your Dog was number 1, so the king of the castle has been crowned. This is, I guess, like, like rankings and everything like that. This is technically the Prince of the Castle. This is my second favorite track off the whole LP.
I figured that's where you were going. It's just a matter of how to get there. But no, I'm right there with you. It's a great song, and it just slaps so hard. And again, it doesn't really elevate too much on the lyrical front. It basically makes this point. It's like, listen, it's no fun to be bored, and I'm no fun to be around because I'm bored. And if I were with you, perhaps things might not be as bad, but I'm not, so therefore I'm bored. It's very straightforward, and that, I think, is one of the elements that a lot of punk bands would very much dive into, particularly, most famously, the band The Sex Pistols covered this song as their final song on their initial point of existence. And there was Johnny Rotten in San Francisco holding the mic, singing No Fun, realizing it was in fact no fun, and the band broke up soon after that. So there's a fun story for you. But moving on from the rather fun No Fun, Ryan, I kick it over to you for the next track, which is A Real Cool Time, actually.
Can I come over tonight?
I mean,
oh man, okay. Anyway, so sorry, that door was right there for the taking, man. So
I know.
Real Cool Time. I want to put this song basically kind of into like the good song bucket, coming right out of the gate, because it's very much Iggy and the Stooges. Well, the Stooges as a whole. Like this album is the Stooges. Like them basically kind of sticking in their lane and doing what they do. Like on the instrumental front, like the guitar is doing a really cool part underneath everything. And alongside that guitar, you get the drums driving the rhythm very effectively. So like the dynamics between the brothers there, Rick and Scott Ashton, are very evident. Like, I do like the chemistry that they've built together. And outside of that moment, like towards the end, things get a little bit more jammy, which I did appreciate. And Iggy here, like vocally, it's pretty much like his performance isn't really stand out-ish. I mean, it's not bad by any means, but it's just very much like, him basically doing what you would expect of him, but nothing more. It's like nothing exceptional. Like, it's like a combination of I Want to Be Your Dog and like No Fun, but without like the snarl of this, like the sass. Like it's basically it's a good vocal performance. And like the only other thing I gotta say about the song as a whole is the song is basically a booty call with lyrics about coming over a person's place, and they want to have a really cool time. But yeah, it's a simple song, but it has a lot of interesting elements working for it.
So my thoughts on Real Cool Time, to me, I'm surprised you inflicted No Fun as part of its musical DNA. To me, this sounds like not just an exact replica of I Want to Be Your Dog, but the sequel to I Want to Be Your Dog in theme and instrumental performance. I mean, I will say this is a step down from I Want to Be Your Dog, which isn't saying a whole lot because I Want to Be Your Dog is a great song. But here you get a basic performance that's similar with the band in rhythm with each other. I will say Scott Ashton's drums are going pretty crazy throughout the entirety of this track. Like, that's one thing I noticed as a big positive from this track. Like, they don't wear you off so much that it's just all over the place and messy, but it's flashy enough where it's just like, oh, okay, all right, I could dig this. But aside from that, Iggy's performance, like you say, is good. It's solid. There were moments where I thought he was over singing a little bit. Like he almost had like put on some sort of like fake greaser accent where it's like, hey, I want to come over tonight. What do you want to do? You know, like he's trying out for a backup role in Grease. So the other thing about this song is that lyrically it feels less explicit than I Want to Be Your Dog. Like this almost feels like the family friendly version of it. Like, you know, instead of I want to be your dog, it's I want to have a real cool time. And it's just like, hey, a sex song your parents can listen to. Fun. But aside from that, I really don't have a whole lot to say about this track that you haven't already covered. To me, this definitely goes into the good song bucket. It's a little bit of a step down from its predecessor in I Want to Be Your Dog, but it's a solid track nonetheless.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, for a lot of these songs, outside of like my top three, and like, you know, I would say honestly with We Will Fall as well, like, I'm not going to group that in like a top track, but it's a notable track. A lot of these tracks are basically kind of like, I'm going to have a lot of the same things to say about it, but it doesn't take away from like, you know, the overall, like, you know, composition and the performances as a whole. With that being said, though, you ready to shuffle on into the next track, which is And.
Yes. And this is the 6th track of 8 on this album. And I'm just going to come out and say it. This song is ass. So, where do I begin with this one? First of all, I've listened to this twice in my car and once through my TV. And in all cases, it sounds like Iggy is very far away from the mic. So, that's just a production error where it feels like he's just sort of wandering around away from the mic and isn't really singing into it. He doesn't have really much of a flavor to his vocal on this particular track. I mean, it still does sound like Iggy Pop, but it sounds like he's crooning in a way similar to Jim Morrison did on the Crystal Ship, just not as effectively. And the band itself sounds like they're rehearsing. It sounds like they're just sort of plodding along and just playing the most basic, like, chords. And you get this moment towards the end of the first verse where it just stops and Scott Ashton is drumming the rhythm of the song and doesn't put any fills in. He just keeps going. And it just sounds lazy. This whole song feels lazy. But the laziest part of it might be the lyrics. Because there are lyrics and then there are rhymes. And to me, these are rhymes. These are lyrics that feel like they are something that you wrote for like a 9th grade English class. And not only that, it sounds like Iggy is delivering them like that. It just sounds like they're reading like poetry and just like da 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 da. Like, with No Fun and 1969, they were simplistic lyrics, but it had a bit of a rhythm. It had a pulse to it. This song doesn't have a pulse at all. To me, this sounds like 60s psychedelia to people who hate 60s psychedelia, but haven't actually listened to 60s psychedelia. Like, this just sounds like a droning... I wouldn't even say droning. It just sounds like a light, airy attempt at some sort of psychedelic love ballad. And the lyrics are delivered placidly. The lyrics themselves aren't nothing to write home about. And Iggy towards the end is just sort of singing in the mic, and then this band gets into this freak out, and you just hear Iggy going, and I thought about it a couple times, and I was wondering almost if this is like a take on a Frank Zappa like parody of Slow Psychedelia, like this is meant to be a joke song, where the reason they're not trying that hard is because they're supposed to not try that hard. It's supposed to be funny, that it's just like, hey, we came up with this song, we hope you like it. That could very well be the case, but even if it is, I'm not laughing. It's not a funny joke. It's just a lazy song from a band that has already proven time and time again on this record alone that they could be funnier when they're being serious. So I don't feel like I have to say it, but I'm going to say it anyway. And very easily is my least favorite track on this album.
Man, I love spicy Matt here. So, oh man, but yeah. I mean, I'm just gonna come out right at the gate and say this does not complete my top 3. So, and it's so it basically is gonna go into like the good song bucket for me, maybe towards like the album track kind of territory. Like what I would honestly put into like maybe I'll put it in the same bucket as like Real Cool Time, where it's just like, yeah, this is basically them staying in their lane. They're trying some cool stuff, in my opinion, but nothing's really standing out. But like going into like little things about the track that I appreciated. So yeah, the song as a whole, it's kind of a funky song that devolves into a bit of chaos towards the end. The wah guitars are I found them to be laying a nice backdrop to everything for the track, and the bridge section here as a whole is I found to be pretty cool, with Iggy doing some nice vocals, and that those progress into more screamy vocals at the end. And the only thing I gotta really say about the song as a whole on the instrumental front is the fact that the guitar solo at the end is good. I did appreciate what Rick Ashton was doing there, and also for the first time, I actually found that the bass having a unique and stand outish kind of part. Like I did appreciate what Dave Alexander was doing there to counteract Rick Ashton. So shout out to Dave. I hope you're doing well. But on a lyrical front, the way I kind of took this song, it's basically kind of a riff on the lyrical front of like I Want to Be Your Dog, with taking a twisted angle on a love story, basically saying like, hey, you basically broke my spirit, and like here I am, and everything like that. I mean, you get lyrics like, I looked into your cool eyes, it felt so fine, I floated in your swimming pools, I felt so weak, I felt so blue. So like, basically somebody disintegrating within a relationship on an emotional front. So I found that to be interesting. And yeah, the only other thing I got to say about the song as a whole is Anne could also be it could be a girl, but it also could be a reference to the Stooges' hometown, Ann Arbor, Michigan. I found that to be interesting. It could be like a callback to like just how the hometown. Your hometown is like basically kind of like making you depressed and making you lose all sense of self. But yeah, for me, and it's just it is what it is. It's not that bad of a time for me, but I did appreciate it for what it was doing.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the worst track I've ever heard, but again, just for the rhythmic prowess of songs like No Fun, I Want to Be Your Dog, 1969, I even throw a Real Cool Time in there. They just sound so slow and lethargic on this, and to me, I just couldn't let go of it. And again, the lyrics, for as more in-depth of it as they may seem to be, they're, again, just delivered as basic, like, elementary level as you can get. So, yeah, I'm not a fan of this song, but it is what it is, and I'm ready to move on, if you are, Ryan, to the penultimate track on the Stooges, which is Not Right.
All right, so with Not Right here, the penultimate track, yeah, for me, like, yet again, we found another simple song, but this song here packs a punch, and it's pretty interesting. So, like, the coming right out of the gate, the thing that I gravitated immediately towards was Rick Ashton's guitar, and I feel like we've been singing his praises throughout this whole album. So shout out to him, giving him his flowers. He's the instrumental MVP of this review for us here, at least on my standpoint. But like his thudding like lick that he was doing, I found it to be an excellent grounding force for the song, and I'm also digging as a whole the chaotic nature of the instrumentation. You get a lot of stop starts, but also like moments of like pure chaos that the band kind of just weaves into and weaves out of. So like I found that to be very interesting for an album that's basically been littered with pretty straightforward instrumentation for the most part. And the only other thing I got to really say about the song as a whole is the outro was great with basically the chaos taking over. On the lyric front, I mean, it's not complicated. It's pretty straightforward. Iggy does a good job, performing it, and it's a very enjoyable performance. Nothing really too standout-ish, though. And about the song as a whole, in a 1976 interview with Stuart Grundy, Iggy Pop explained that this song was about a pretty girl named Betsy from Detroit. Iggy and Betsy were mutually attracted to each other, but when faced with the opportunity of getting together, both realized something was not quite right. So, yeah, the only thing I've got to say about the song is I just enjoyed the instrumentation and the overall package so much that we have completed my top tracks off the whole album. And for those of you who are keeping score at home, and Matt is as well, you probably can do the math. This is my third favorite track off the whole LP.
Yeah, and I can understand why, because unlike Anne, this does go back to the proper crunch, the proper groove that the band has displayed at its best throughout this album. And it very much sounds like a musical sequel to No Fun, with the rhythm section being what it is. You don't get the hand claps as much this time, but they are sort of there. If not, they're not there, they're there in spirit. So it definitely has a bit of a groove to it. And lyrically speaking, I kind of thought the lyrics were kind of vague. Like, obviously, you mentioned the backstory behind it, and that makes sense because he just says straight out, this girl is not right, but you're not sure what right about. And to me, the idea of not being sure what's not right, but having that anxiety that something definitely isn't right, I think is matched very well with the musical performance on this track, which is very frantic and frustrated. And yeah, I just appreciate the band's performance in keeping up with the frantic nature of this track. Again, mixing the vague with the anxiety. The band sounds anxious in the right ways. It sounds very frustrated, but it also has a very strong groove behind it. So yeah, I appreciate Not Right quite a bit. Not quite a top track for me. This goes very firmly into the good song bucket, and considering what we just had with Anne, a definite relief to the ears.
So yeah, I'm glad that you appreciate Not Right. Not to the extent that I do, but still, it's not one of the tracks where you're putting it into the I would say the Real Cool Time song bucket, where it's just like the Stooges song bucket, for lack of a better descriptor there. So without any further ado, I say we finish off the track discussions here with the final track off the whole LP, and with that concluding track, it is titled simply "Little Doll."
Yes, Little Doll. And appropriately enough, we bookend the album with a Bo Diddley beat for this track as well. You get that stomping shuffle by Scott Ashton, along with Brother Ron and Dave doing their guitar works and bass works respectively. Band once again sounds solid, sounds good. And Iggy once again sounds like Iggy, got that snarl in his voice. Sounds frustrated, but also inquisitive in a sense, but very simplistic. And in the context of this song, the basicness and the drollness of Iggy's vocals kind of make the song creepy, because the song itself is about how Iggy, or the protagonist in this case, is checking out this woman, and much like a few other songs, is like, hey, I think I'm interested in you. Let's hook up. But there's also that air of, I'm looking at you, I think you're cool, you might be a good time, but I don't actually know you. And so that sort of voyeuristic rear window type of delivery or context for this song, mixed with the band sounding frantic like they have throughout most of the good tracks on this album, does provide for, again, a very, very menacing way of everything. And some people might look at this track because of its lyrical nature and think it's a little creepy or a little too masculine. But again, this is 1969, so the idea of, being anything other than raw, and not to mention the Stooges being very raw on record and simplistic, getting their point across, it does make sense, even though it's not everybody's cup of tea. So, simply put, Little Doll is a nice closer to the album, and one that I would put in the good song bucket as well.
I'm right there with you in terms of appreciation for the track as a whole, and I appreciate your lyrical, insight about it, because, I took the song as basically a metaphor for addiction. You get the, the lyrics about, smoking on a cigarette, you're the one who makes me sing, bring happiness in everything, you're the only real one, a real way to have some fun. But I kind of after your lyrical analysis and your piece about it, I'm gonna go with your side, not your side, but your take on the lyrics. Seems a little bit more truth to form, as opposed to my generalization about it being about addiction. So outside of the lyrics, though, not really much here to talk about as a whole, because you illustrated, the start of the whole track, you get that Bo Diddley, shuffle beat that you talked about with the drum beat, and here, the thing that got me hooked, at least right away, within the context of that beat that's created by the three band members, is I actually found Dave Alexander's groove to be the, I don't want to say the highlight, but the thing that just got my attention first with the track. It works well alongside Scott Ashton's beat, and everything works well alongside the distorted guitar of Rick Ashton. And also, speaking of Rick Ashton and doing Rick Ashton stuff within the context of the song, the guitar solo at the end, it's a great way to end off the song and the album as a whole. I will say, though, not every album needs a definitive closer. We've talked about several of our reviews. I hate to keep bringing up this comparison, but when we did Taylor Swift's The Tortured Poets Department, with Clara Bow, or even Sabrina Carpenter's Short and Sweet, and a couple other throw in any other random review that had an effective closer track. Here with Little Doll, it doesn't feel so much that we're bringing the story to the close. It's just here's another pretty cool song. It's a fun song, and that's pretty much my feelings about it as a whole.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you, and I appreciate the fact that you did bring that up, because again, some albums feel like they have to have a closer, some do have a closer, but they don't all need a closer. I mean, in the case of the Stooges, it's not like a concept album or a story album or a concept album. It's an album full of songs, and the concept here is basically, we're just gonna play some rock and roll and do it as simplistically and honestly as we possibly can. And in that regard, you don't need to have a story. You don't need to have anything other than basic feelings, basic beats, and the Stooges accomplished that.
They did indeed accomplish that. And, speaking about the feeling of accomplishment, for those of you who are listening at home and have, checked out your scorecards, and saw that the fact that for the context of this album, there were indeed 8 tracks up, and me and Matt have knocked all those 8 tracks down. All of our scorecards have been filled out as I illustrated, so there's only one thing left to say about this review.
We did it, man.
We did indeed do it. We traveled back to the year of 1969 and found out that actually there is some really cool time stuff going on within the year of 1969 in terms of a sonic level here. So yeah, I'm gonna go first in terms of my overall thoughts and like my overall rating on the debut album of the Stooges. So, overall, for me, I could see how this album was the proto punk album that like gave punk rockers like the New York Dolls, the Ramones, the Clash, like basically the blueprint, the Rosetta Stone for what would be punk rock going forward. Because like I know like we really didn't dive into so much of the instrumentation and like compared to like other episodes that we've done in the past, but for the context here, like it didn't need it. Like you get, with the exception of We Will Fall, you get 8 tracks that are basically rock and roll tutti. They're not too complex in nature, but each track brings like a pretty unique element in its own right that make it stand out for one reason or another. I mean, Rick Ashton's guitar work is phenomenal. He does do a lot of good work throughout the whole LP. Like you get a lot of solos that really, really do cap off a lot of the tracks in a very nice way. And then even outside the context of the solos, like his guitar work within I Want to Be Your Dog and like countless amount of other tracks. Well, I don't want to say countless, but like throughout the whole album really do add that nice distorted crunchy layer that this LP does bring to the table. And just overall, like big songs, my favorite songs that I illustrated, like I Want to Be Your Dog, No Fun, and Not Right. Like I did appreciate them, obviously, because they were in my top 3. I was really taken back by We Will Fall. It kind of reminded me of my appreciation for Planet Caravan by Black Sabbath, where I'm like, oh, I didn't know the band could do something like this. So, yeah, overall, though, like, I will say, as a complete package, I can't, in good conscience, give this album a 10 out of 10, even though it was the godfather of all punk rock. I mean, as an overall sonic package, it's a really great time, but there's not enough songs here that basically kind of like blow my mind and just alter my brain chemistry, and like yeah, just overall like combination of all the songs, like they work well within each other, but it doesn't take it to the next level, if you know what I mean. So, without any further ado, like my overall rating for this LP, which is the debut album by the Stooges, I'm gonna give it a solid 8 out of 10.
And for me, thinking about this album, I really have to think about, obviously I had my qualms about Anne and We Will Fall for objective and subjective reasons, but again, We Will Fall is a good track, and aside from Anne, they're pretty much all good tracks, especially the big ones like I Want to Be Your Dog, 1969, and No Fun. And again, the context of this album coming out in 1969 is necessary because, once again, this was at a time where it felt like not just society, but rock felt like it had to expand to new heights and try things they never tried before and get experimental. And while there's a lot of good stuff that came out of it, this felt like a album that had to go in the other direction to balance the scales. This is an album that had to say, listen, you don't need all the fancy gadgetry, you don't need full orchestras, you don't need synthesizers, you don't need, some sort of witch's tale about the Knights Gladys and whatever the case is. No, you just have to talk about rock and roll and how you feel, 3 chords and the truth. And for a good chunk of this album, that's exactly what they do. Now, I will say that the back half of the album does falter a little bit. Obviously with Anne, but even songs like Little Doll and Not Right are good, but they're not like super standoutish. So overall, I'm right there with you, Ryan. I too am going to give the Stooges an 8 out of 10.
So that makes the math pretty easy. I'm just gonna cut to the chase. Our average score with this record here is an 8 out of 10 because
math
is sometimes easy as Sunday morning, man. So, speaking about Sunday morning, I'm going to go into my next album recommendation here, which is not a smooth segue, but you know what? I'm going to just stick the landing here. So, for me, like, my next album recommendation, there was a couple of ways that I could have gone here. Like, you know, the obvious way to go would be to recommend Raw Power by Iggy and the Stooges. But, you know, there was another group that kind of came up in my research in terms of, like, comparisons or peers at the time that had their debut album that came out in the year of 1972. And, you know what? I'm going to actually, you know, use this whatever platform that we have here to, like, you know, highlight them because I don't feel like they're as well known. I did kind of dropped their name earlier in the review. But yeah, the band that I'm talking about is the New York Dolls, and their debut album, like I kind of hinted at, dropped in 1972. It's a self-titled debut. Fantastic, like, you know, punk rock album. Shares a lot of the same elements of this LP. Dives a little further into the punk-ish elements, not so much of like the experimental instrumentation or just the like the Bo Diddley shuffle beat that we've talked about here, but very much leans into that garage rock, punk rock feel that the Stooges were going for in the album that we just got done talking about. So yeah, what about you, Matt? What would be your next album recommendation?
So for me, my next album recommendation is also going to be a debut album. And for me, I'm going back 2 years, and I apologize, Ryan, because the album I'm about to recommend is an album that I explicitly chose not to talk about several weeks ago. So this album is the album from the producer of this record and his former band, which is the Velvet Underground and Nico by the Velvet Underground. And much like, I know, I'm sorry, but much like the Stooges' debut album, the Velvet Underground Nico has a lot of very stripped down rock and roll and songs like There She Goes Again, I'm Waiting for the Man, Run, 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 just to name a few, but also has the experimental side if you're into tracks like We Will Fall, songs like Venus and Furs and Heroin. So that was the album I was reminded of most listening to the Stooges. So the Velvet Underground and Nico from 1967 is my next recommendation based off of the Stooges' debut album.
So, ladies and gentlemen, to summarize, we gave this album, the debut album by the Stooges, released in 1969, a solid 8 out of 10. I recommended the debut album by the New York Dolls, released in 1972. It is a self-titled release. And Matthew recommends the album that we could have talked about, you know, a few reviews back. But that album is indeed Velvet Underground and Nico, aka the Banana Album. So a lot of debut albums that we just talked about there, like, you know, within that like those past like few sentences, man. So
I know it's funny. I mean, we could have. It was the fact that we had, you know, the Velvet Underground's debut album, the New York Dolls' debut album, based off the recommendation of the Stooges' debut album, and we didn't talk about the Velvet Underground's debut album because of the Doors' debut album. Do I need to go on?
It's just like a Russian nesting doll, like, you know, just a hat within a hat there, man. Yeah, so a very fun review, a bit, like, you know, simple, but I feel like if we would have, like, you know, like expanded upon, like, you know, a couple of the tracks and like what was within them, like we would be padding for time, honestly. Like, We Will Fall, but like, yeah, I enjoyed talking about the Stooges with you, man.
I did too, man. I again, I wasn't sure what to expect except for, you know, the fact that it was a proto-punk album, I wasn't sure exactly what that meant. I appreciate a good chunk of it. There was only one really bad track and one really weird track, but yeah, no, this is a good time to talk about it.
Speaking about good times to talk about stuff and albums as a whole, we have one more thing to settle up before we curb stomp this review into bed. Matthew, where are we going next in our journey of musical listening and dissection?
So, as fate would have it, I will have the album choice for both our 99th full-length episode and our 99th review. So, in that honor, I'm going to give you two options, Ryan, of albums that were released in the year of 1999. And we are going to talk about both of them for these next two episodes. So whichever one you don't pick this time around, we're going to talk about the next time around. So with that in mind, I'm going to make you choose between two states within the United States of America, if you're ready, Ryan.
I am absolutely ready, man. Give me your worst, man. I mean, your best.
Well, that part's for next week. We'll find out if it's the best or the worst. But for next week's review, we can either go to California or we can go to West Virginia.
Oh, man. So, all jokes aside, let's start in West Virginia.
We'll start in West Virginia. Okay. So, funny enough, just based off what we were talking about, next week we're going to be talking about yet another debut album.
Love it.
But unlike some of the reviews we've done recently, we're actually going to be heading into the world of country music. And we're going to be talking about the debut album by one Glendale, West Virginia, that is, by the name of Brad Paisley, and his debut album from 1999 entitled Who Needs Pictures?
We will find out who needs pictures next week, man. Let's go. I'm ready to talk about some Brad Paisley.
I'm ready too, man. I am ready to talk about some good old-fashioned, well, not old-fashioned because we are talking about 1999, but old-fashioned enough country music. So I'm looking forward to it. And again, I'll reveal to you what the other album is in a few episodes from now. But that's it for this one, Ryan. Any final words on the Stooges?
Goodbye.